So with just 2 days to go before most voters cast their ballots for the local government elections, how are most parties faring when it comes to gender representation? Well, more than 55% of eligible voters in the country are actually women, with the largest cohort in the 40 to 49-year age group. What unique opportunities does this actually present to different organizations who are certainly still hoping to capture your imagination and that of their constituencies? Well, let's unpack this for you now. Bring in our guests. Dr. Mpho Phalatse is the DA's mayoral candidate in the City of Johannesburg. Colleen Makhubele is her counterpart for COPE, and Shuling Lindoor is with the Patriotic Alliance and is their mayoral candidate in Nelson Mandela Bay. To all three of our guests, thanks for your time, and it's lovely to have you on the program. Dr. Phalatse, I wonder if I can start with you. For one, there's absolutely no shortage of female politicians in this country. So with that in mind, why do you think it is that in 2016, for instance, only one executive mayor out of the 8 metros we have was a woman?
Well, I mean, that's a good question, and it is concerning, but it is also an indictment on women. I know I'm from the Democratic Alliance, and there's so much room for women to flourish. I mean, if you look at the 2 metros in Gauteng, Ekurhuleni and Tshwane, do you know that the DA only had female potential candidates? So in Gauteng, in Johannesburg, it was myself and Leah Knox, and in Ekurhuleni, it was Refilwe Ntsake, who's the mayoral candidate, as well as the caucus leader in Ekurhuleni, who's also female. So you had 4 females. So whatever the outcome, you were always going to end up with a female candidate. It just shows you how much room there is for women to take up leadership positions. But the thing with the Democratic Alliance is we don't try and chase quotas. So what we won't do is put someone in just because they are female. We don't believe that's how things should run. We believe that people should put their hands up and they should be given a fair opportunity to contest for opportunities. Therefore, the indictment is on women. We believe in rights with responsibilities. So every woman has a right to occupy a leadership position, but there's also a responsibility that is placed on that woman to put their hand up, go through the process of selection until they've made it into a mayoral position. And that's the responsibility part that for me I find is lacking with a lot of women, where, you know, we disqualify ourselves before we even start the race. We don't think we'll make it. And that's what needs to change. Women need to put their hand up more. And I'm challenging myself too, as I'm talking to you now, to put my hand up more, not only for mayorship, but for more positions as well.
Colleen, let me bring you into the discussion. Interesting stance that Dr. Phalatse takes. She believes that women are to blame for why women aren't necessarily elected into leadership positions, at least in the political sphere. Do you agree with that?
Thank you, Ayanda. You know, partly, but I think the main problem that has happened is that and especially in the political space, the women like Lillian Goy, who marched to the union building, are no longer there. Women now are groveling for positions. They are not able to take a stance and say, this is my principle, I believe in this, and I can run things because I'm capable. But because a lot of positions are held by men, they are now coming under the shadow trying to just get by. You look at most women in the ANC, and I believe they are capable women that could have led the ANC many years ago. They could be standing even as presidential elections, but why are they sitting back and following what men do? Number 2 is because women are just not taking up courses as well in the political space. You look at the GBV, you look at the issues of girls. How many politicians who are women have actually championed the cause and stood up and said, we're going to make GBV like your COVID to be a national disaster, because it is an indictment against women. It is affecting the productivity of women and girls. You know, how many women can stand up and say, look at the unemployment of youth and girls especially, and let me take up that cause. I'm a politician, I have a position. So I think there's just this lack of courage, lack of the resolve that was in the beginning, where everybody just wants to fall into a position and be there and say, I can at least earn my money, etc. And I think when I went to vets and the girls, they could see what I'm doing, you know, they were so encouraged to say, my goodness, we didn't know that actually women can run to be mayor And we are so encouraged. I'm studying political science, and I'm looking now bigger because I can see that you've taken the courage, you are educated, you can do it, and you've got a profession, you can still rise up and do it. So I think it's a lack of role models of women that have just fallen off in the past that had the courage to stand and be role models.
Shuling, let me get your initial thoughts around this. I mean, two of our guests who are part of this panel are surprisingly, dare I add, putting the burden on women themselves for why we're seeing the kind of trends and statistics that we're seeing. Where do you stand in that spectrum?
Good morning, Ayanda, and thank you for the opportunity of having me on this show. To me, I disagree. I fully disagree. We can't blame women. We have been oppressed for so long. If it's not gender-based violence, it's just something in the community where people just break each other down. This morning, I am so enlightened to speak about this topic because our party, the Patriotic Alliance, they're breaking the stereotypical patriarchal veil of women that think that they can't be in leadership. And that is why it's important this morning for us to motivate this woman. Yes, we are standing here as mayoral candidates, and people are looking up to us, especially the woman, the female child. They are looking up to us. So this morning I disagree when we say that female ought to be blamed. No, we are not to be blamed. We need to just step up. We need to take a stance in this community. We need to rise above the situation. Remember, without a woman in a house, nothing can go right. She does the washing, she does the cooking. The mom is the one doing the homework with the kids. So it's time for us women to rise up, and that is why we have strong leaders like us sitting here this morning, motivating the other women in South Africa.
Right. Well, I mean, I think...
I don't know if I can add. You said we can add. Look, I think, when I said I partly agree, it's because we have moved so much since the dawn of our democracy in terms of the legislation that empowers and enables women, and the quotas that have been put in there to say we want 50% or more representation of women, not only in parliament, not only in politics, but in business, in many aspects. And I'm saying, what is holding women back from standing up and claiming that quota and claiming the implementation of that legislation that enables you to say, I can stand, I've got the qualification, I've got the competence, etc. And what my sister Shushu is saying, it's correct, because in the home, and traditionally we've been wired in that way, in the home it's easy for me to stand up and say, the man is not here, or he's here, he's not doing what he's supposed to do. Let me get up and go and provide for these children. Let me go and see what the neighbors can help me with. Let me rise up. In the home, it's natural to do that. And it has to become natural in a business sphere, political sphere, and any other sphere for a woman to rise up and say, it's disaster in government. Let me stand up and see what I can do for children, women, and men.
Right. Mpho Phalatse, let me bring you also into the discussion. I mean, I find it a bit counterintuitive, really, that we even have so much content to speak about when we try to consider the issues around why women aren't necessarily to the fore. In other words, I'm struggling to connect how this is even still a discussion, given how much time has lapsed, how legislation has changed, etc., etc. Let me hear from you now that, the lion's share of electioneering is behind us, whether you feel enough time was taken even addressing this during the election campaign.
My point exactly, Ayanda, and I think that was my point of departure, is that the ground is fertile for women to flourish. And women need to be aware of it, and they just need to run with it. There's nothing that's holding women back. And
is that where it starts and ends, though? Sorry to interrupt you there, because as fertile as the ground is, to use your words, there's something to be said around perhaps whether women are given enough space to even make decisions outside of just featuring prominently on stages alongside male leaders who run these different political parties.
So I'm in the Democratic Alliance, and I speak through that frame of reference. I mean, if you look at the DA, it's one of the big parties in this country that's been led by a woman. There's no other big party like the Democratic Alliance that's been led by a woman. The NC has never been led by a woman. and the third biggest party is the EFF. They've never been led by a woman. So that just goes to show that in the Democratic Alliance, there's so much room for women to flourish. There's no limitation. The same woman became the mayor of Cape Town. She became the best mayor in the world. She became the premier of the Western Cape. She did amazingly in her role. And so we do have, if you think about Helen Suzman in the Democratic Alliance, this woman stood alone in parliament against a regime during apartheid times that was unfair to the majority of people in South Africa, black people. That woman stood alone in parliament, I think for about 13 years, fighting apartheid by herself. You know, she's one of our matriarchs in the Democratic Alliance. So in the DA, there is a strong value around empowering women, around giving women space to flourish. And we actually believe that women can even do better than men. We always joke about it. John Steenhuisen always says, if you want something done well, give it to a woman. If you look at the female mayors that we have in the DA, I mean, you look at Marlene van Staden in Modimolle, you look at the mayor of Stellenbosch, who's about to lead that metro, that municipality to become ESCOM free, completely free of load shedding. She's trailblazing, and she's saying to me, come, as soon as you occupy that seat, let me show you how we've done it. Let me give you the model so we can fast track you forward. So I'm really in an environment that's so fertile to flourish as a woman. And where I agree is that, yes, we need role models, and that role models need to be more visible. Because in the Democratic Alliance space, we have a lot. I mean, Refilwe Ntseke, the mayoral candidate for Ekurhuleni, has been one of our deputy federal chairpersons in the DA for quite a few terms, and she's doing well in that position. But is it happening in other spaces? Perhaps not. And maybe we need to look at how we can start transferring skills across political parties and creating spaces for women to begin to influence each other beyond the boundaries of their political party. Now, if you want to talk about issues facing women, I've been driving them as an MMC for social development in the city. I was at the forefront of making sure that there is a gender agenda on the executive side of council, where when we took over in 2016, it was only on the oversight side of council or the legislature and not on the executive side. And I made sure that we established GOD, gender, youth, persons with disability,
right,
and agenda on the executive side. And I've been driving that message throughout the campaign. I've done a day that was looking at gender-based violence. You know, we did some exciting stuff. We even had a roundtable discussion with some NGOs around what can be done better. And so there's so many programs.
If I can.
Yes.
Sure, apologies. Just for the interest of time, I think your message has come through loud and clear. Very quickly, Colleen, I mean, do you get a sense that we're going to change the tide without necessarily addressing where the issues lie, which is really in society? I mean, many people argue that the kind of dynamics we're seeing in politics are really just a reflection of just how some communities are set up, how society in general is still configured.
You know, you've hit the root cause of it, because all of us are connected, and we have a root of a society where we come from. And that shapes, obviously, our belief, that shapes a bigger part of who we become, even subconsciously, the kind of decisions that we're going to make, the roles that we're going to occupy. So we have to start at the grassroots in really creating that awareness to women, to say, listen, the tide has changed. The doors are now open. The ground has shifted. You have to rise up. The legislation allows you to. Everything encourages you to. But also, one of the other root causes that I think we have to be honest and address as women is that we ourselves are not supporting each other. You know, you get a woman on top, but she will not be bringing up other women along with her. You know, look at Ayanda, the majority of the gender, you know, all over the world and in this country in particular, it's women. There is no reason why we don't have at least more women voted in, because that's a vote of a woman, you know.
Right.
And you go to many organizations, even women themselves, and I've been in that experience as well, where a woman will rather in an interview select to take a man than to take another woman, because fundamentally, there's also a threat that we need to deal with. We don't understand each other as a complementary body. that must work and function together solidly to move forward. We want to have bits and pieces of women there, women there. It doesn't work.
Right.
And I think that route to it that will need to be addressed, I think even from the village kind of perspective. We here can understand our children can learn because, we get so much information and exposure. But you go back to the villages, the roles are still the same, where the man has to be the patriarch and the women must be obviously the support structure and submissive one and, falling under a man. And that translates into how we even vote when we go into offices.
Yes.
So I think those three roots need to be addressed.
Got you. Shuling, let me have you have the final bite of the cherry. What role do political parties have to play in, again, shifting the tide?
Okay, shifting the tide to me, Ayanda, it means what it means, shifting. It's breaking through. It's breaking through the stereotypical patriarchal veil. It's breaking through as women. This morning, to me, I want to emphasize the vote of the woman in this election. I want to emphasize on that, especially the importance that it brings in the light of the fact that we are on the ground. We are specifically servicing people on the ground. I feel that the vote of the woman this morning would have been my main focal point. It's time for us to change the impact that women have on society. We need to change that. And that is why I believe this morning that female votes this morning, a special vote has started. We are running in Utenhage as we speak. I just came to office to just come sit here because I needed to speak about this topic. Woman, if the mom says she's not going to a voting station, the child is not going to go, the husband is not going to go. Females, we need to stand up. This is our time. This is our time to change society. And when we're changing society, I'm saying let's change the mindsets of our children, of our husbands. Let's change the mindsets of all politicians. This morning, it's up to the female, really. I would have loved to gone into a debate where we say we challenge the male and the female. But this morning, I feel the female, we have a big say in this community. We are kingmakers. We are kingmakers. We are the birthers of this world. So we need to change everything. And I think this morning, as politicians, we would just like to say to all South Africans this morning, please, mothers, let's step up. Let's step up for our children. Let's step up to the plate. Let's change the narrative of our kids not having the basics that we need to succeed in life. Let's birth this nation. Let's create new things. I think that is my final say this morning, and it's my plea this morning to South Africans.
Well, that's the time we have. Thanks very much indeed for all your indulgence. We really do appreciate it. That there is Shuling Lindoor. She's with the Patriotic Alliance. Colleen Makhubele is with COPE, and Dr. Mpho Phalatse with the Democratic Alliance. Interesting stats for you. More than 55% of those who are eligible voters are actually women. I wonder if that changes your perspective around our discussion. To all three of our guests, thanks very much indeed for your time.